Hi. Welcome back to another episode on the Healthy Wisdom series with Dr. Jen Chen. Today, we're going to continue to explore the wisdom of identity. And today's big umbrella topic that we're going to continue on with is love yourself. Because loving ourselves is one of the fundamental things that I find we quite often don't take the time to do, and we don't actually know that we're not loving ourselves. There are times when I feel like, heck, I don't even really like myself on certain days. But in general, I give myself the time to actually sit down and go, well, there are little things about myself that I do really love and appreciate. And it is taking that time to actually do that I find is very valuable. Last week we talked about journaling and making the lists, and I think this is a good also exercise to incorporate into reminding ourselves what it is about ourselves that we love. And it could be really small things such as I love the way I give attention to my spouse, my partner, to I often make the effort to listen to others with an open heart and without any judgment. So there are little things that we can hone in on. And once you build that list, you're going to find that, it's going to become a little bit of a reminder on those days that you don't necessarily feel so great about, maybe something that had happened during that time that you just don't feel too good about. So for example, sometimes, I will lose my cool, and I'll say certain things that I don't necessarily mean, and that doesn't often happen. But when they do happen, and they call it like the 10-second response rate, and sometimes it's just such a trigger that you don't even catch yourself in time, and then you're like so like frustrated with yourself. The moment the words come out, you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that, because I really didn't. When you step back and you are calm and collected, more collected, you'll realize that certain things that we've said during the heat of the moment, where you're the hair in the back of your neck is standing and you are just like fuming, from whatever triggers have happened, to instigate that, and as soon as the words come out, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, I don't know why I did that. But yeah, so journaling, to remind ourselves, what are the things that we really love about myself, is a wonderful way to reinforce, the little things in life that we quite often neglect. So really love yourself. Another thing that I find is, during this exercise, is when you strip yourself down, strip away all the titles, all the accomplishments, all the talents that you have, and ask yourself, with all those things, sort of taken away, that have become a part of you. But quite often, a lot of us, we tend to identify with, what we do, in our careers, our roles, in our family. Those things tend to almost blur the lines of who we truly are inside. And so one of the other exercises that I find is quite useful is to strip away all those things and, use that time to kind of sit down and, again, with the journaling, make a list of all the qualities that you identify or you can recognize in yourself. And I find that exercise to be quite, deep. Maybe not the first couple of times that you sit down to write that list of who you think you are and who you truly maybe want to emulate, and be expressing. So I find that to be a very eye-opening exercise the longer you do it. So I would recommend that you guys take the time to write that list at least at least on a daily basis, if not every other day. But at least try to be consistent with it because you will start to run out of little things to say about yourself. And then you start to dig deeper. And it's when you dig deeper that you're going to find, some of those more integral part of yourself come out. So definitely start, on that list gathering. Another thing that I also find is, we tend to be really hard on ourselves, you know, and we have to learn to perhaps maybe give ourselves permission, you know, permission to, I say permission because, we when we're hard on ourselves, we actually get get almost not violent, but almost like really mean. um, in and really we get down on ourselves quite a lot when it comes to certain failures that we've experienced, or for example, if you are not where you're at, or where you would like to be, in your career, in your relationships, and where you are financially. Those are all things that can almost be, um, how do you say it? They almost hover. It's like a dark cloud that's just hovering over you. And, during that time that, you don't recognize, that truthfully, life is full of ups and downs. And I know that, some of you might actually be experiencing some really down times. And, before you can get back up to the highs, um, learn to learn to not give yourself so much pressure and encouragement to yourself. And doing this exercise can also kind of help in the process of getting you back up to being at least in the level playing field. One of my good friends back in the day, I remember he would say to me, Jen, without the lows, you can't really experience the highs at their highs, and life is going to be filled with lots of highs and lots of lows. So, how do you know that something brings you so much joy if you've never experienced the devastating sorrow of either losing someone that you love, or not being in the relationship that you thought was going to last forever, or not giving yourself enough endurance to outlast, that weight loss journey that you were so determined to do for the fifth time, So the highs are quite often highlighted when we've had some lows in our experiences and in our lives. And I think it's very important to be able to kind of recognize that. And if you can, learn to embrace that, because that is part of loving yourself. If you can't love your past, it's really hard to move forward and see the future that you could have. And another thing that I would like to kind of discuss with you guys today, or have a conversation on, is to be you. How do we embrace who we are deep down? I often say that, I know I heard this somewhere like years ago, that you've got to be you, and just be authentically you, because honestly, everyone else is taken. Don't try to be somebody else, or don't try to be somebody that you think, somebody wants you to be, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to feel fulfilled. You're not going to be able to feel the joy of living in that power that you can get when you learn to be you and just be unapologetic about who you are. And it's a journey. I'm not going to say that it's, it's going to be like a cakewalk, but it is a journey. And that's what we're here to do today. We're just trying to prompt you and give you some ideas as to how to get started. There are definitely lots and lots of work that needs to be done. Because I think ultimately what we're all seeking for is belonging and connection. As Dr. Brene Brown, quite often, I mean, that is the bulk of her work. But to get to that point where you can accept you and be you and love you is quite often one of the biggest challenges that most of us will face in this journey that we call life. So one of the things I like to remind myself, other than the fact that everyone else is taken, so if you can't be somebody else, you got to be you, you know. And um, from that perspective, I always try to remind myself that really, truthfully, this world has limited resources in terms of, how Mother Nature runs. She has an abundance of resources for us to to live and thrive in this world, but also at the same time, nothing really is an accident in this world. Although I've been in seven, but that's on a different level. Um, but truthfully, joking aside, there is no extra room in this world. The fact that out of 400 trillion possibilities, you were created. You were the chosen one for the unique role that you play in this world. And I tell myself that you're the one. You're the one who was put on this world to to do something that you were uniquely equipped to do, and nobody else. So I always try to come back to that concept, and I remind myself constantly, especially when I'm down on myself, like, oh my God, you could have done better. You should have um, been more kind. You should have been more patient. So there are little things in life, that we do that we just go, oh, you shouldn't have. Why did you? Those are the things that, can get in the way. And so what I often try to encourage myself, have no judgments about your life. That's what I tell myself. Have no judgments about your life, and let go of the expectations of who I should be, you know? I often have to remind myself because growing up in my culture, in my family, sort of the environment, that I was put in, constantly moving from country to country, I really didn't have um, a lot of time to fully become ingrained in one culture versus, other people who may have only grown up in one culture. And so for me, like the constant sort of change and moves in my life, made me really kind of doubt myself and where I was coming from and where I belonged and where I would fit in whichever model or school or classroom or friends group that I belonged to, if I did belong to one. I really didn't have quite a map or direction. And so this is something that, has developed over time where I just, kind of have to remind myself and I constantly talk to myself. I mean, I can say like sometimes I almost sound crazy because I talk to myself all the time. But sometimes talking to yourself is a good thing too. So until I started, I think it was like in my early teens where I started to just, write in my diary, and I would just write and write and write and write all my thoughts, all my feelings, all my confusions, all my ups and downs, and all my hurts, all my anger, all my fear, all my just everything that I could think of. I have like I have this thing where I love to collect like little notebooks, and that's what has been building. I have a drawer full actually of these little notebooks filled with tons of words and thoughts and feelings in there. So I highly encourage, you guys to see if, that could be something that would help you as well in your journey.